What's good, YouTube, and welcome back to another video. Today I'm just going to be giving some quick listening impressions of the QDC Anole VX. I think that's how you say it, at least. Anole or Anole. Either one works, I think. QDC is a Chi-Fi manufacturer, actually. I think they did some work for the military in China, but they also make some of the best Chi-Fi IEMs, and I think they're sort of like they're sort of known as the cream of the crop in China, at least. And the VX is their flagship IEM. It is running 10 balanced armatures, and this one has been on my radar for quite a while. So I want to give a big thanks to one of my friends who lent this to me for a couple of days to check out. I have only listened to them for a few hours so far, so this isn't going to be crazy in depth. It's mainly just going to be me going through some of my tracks, my listening process, and as well as some of the things that I'm looking out for when I review and listen critically, at least. And if you want to take a closer look at the build, they're built very nicely, actually. And I really like their connector pins. I think these are proprietary connector pins. It's sort of like the 2-pin one, except there's this thing that slides over to keep them from knocking into one another. And then on the back here, you can see that there are some switches. So yeah, you can absolutely play around with those as well, but my listening impressions today are just going to come from the stock tuning, at least. Okay, so diving right into this, I think the first thing that you're going to notice about the VX is just how resolving it is. When it comes to detail retrieval, transient speed, and pure resolution, I don't think that this IEM has any peer, really, amongst IEMs at least. There is one contender, and that would be the LCD i4 here, but I'm not really sure if you can qualify this as an IEM, at least not in the traditional sense. So yeah, even against the U12T, the VX has a clear edge up in terms of resolution. The transients themselves, I don't think they're very hard, at least in the sense that there's a sense of weight to them, but there's more of just a very crisp nature to them that I don't think I've heard elsewhere out of any other IEM. It's pretty insane, honestly, when you first listen to it. It's definitely the first thing that catches your attention, and I think it's the VX's standout. But yeah, let's just work our way up the frequency response, and let's talk about bass. I think this is pretty interesting on the VX. When I first listened to it, I actually thought it didn't have very good bass. One of the test tracks that I use actually is Dreamcatcher's Silent Night. There is a very strong opening drop at around 10 seconds in, and one of the things that I really look out for is texture. I think I've explained what this is in one of my previous videos. I've definitely explained it in my written reviews, but this is sort of like a micro-splicing to the timbre, especially in the decay function. There's like a sort of feathering to it as the note drags out. And at least for me, that's one of the distinguishing factors between a dynamic driver and a balanced armature IEM. You definitely can have good texture with a balanced armature IEM, and the U12T is a good example of this. The Neo is a good example of a dynamic driver IEM that has lots and lots of texture. And the thing is, I don't really notice that on the VX. It is pretty textureless in the bass. Obviously, though, this isn't what completely qualifies a good bass response. It's just one of the things that I look out for. And outside of this, as I started listening more, I have to say it's pretty good bass for BA. It slams nicely, it has plenty of rumble, and it doesn't hurt that it's also boosted a bit. And I presume if you turn up this switch on the left here, it's going to boost up the bass even more. So yeah, even in the stock tuning, it's not a neutral bass presentation at all. Okay, so let's move to the mid-range. I really don't have much to say here other than that the way it images the mid-range, the presentation at least, is a little bit strange to me. One of the things that I really look out for when I am sort of analyzing the mid-range is its like position on the stage or how it's being projected. I find that IEMs that have it a little bit more recessed or pushed back further positionally sort of create a greater sense of depth. The U12T is a good example of it, the Neo is a good example of it, the Edomatic ER2XR is a good example of it. And I'm really just not getting it with the Anole VX. One of my test tracks, here, let me pop this up. All right, and here's one of my favorite test tracks to use. It is AZ by Sawano Hiroyuki. This is an artist that really plays around with like the soundstage and imaging. And when the vocalist Mizuki enters, she's generally pushed back quite a ways on the soundstage. And I really just don't notice that with the Anole VX. And the staging, I think it's pretty wide and tall, but it just doesn't have that depth to actually project the image. And because of that, it's just in sort of a weird spot for me. The VX definitely has very good positional cues, but just something about it is just a little bit off, man. I don't know what exactly it is, and I'll probably have to listen some more to put my finger on it exactly. Okay, so let's talk about the treble. There's something off about the treble too. I don't know what it is or how to put my finger on it. When I listen to some tracks, Sabai's Million Days, there's a bunch of little sort of like electronic effects and the higher frequencies at the beginning of the song. And there's just a strange roughness to them. Maybe it's a treble spike on the VX, and it's really, really fatiguing. I don't know what it is. And like I said, I haven't listened to it much, but I also haven't noticed it with normal instruments either. It's only presented itself on my like more electronic tracks. Maybe it's just not hitting those frequencies. Maybe it's just, I don't know, man. But yeah, it's just a little bit weird overall. And when it comes to the timbre, a lot of people have complained about BA timbre. This is sort of like a plasticiness or lack of weight to the notes. And yeah, the VX definitely suffers from that. At the same time though, it's not the worst I've heard. It's not delving into like BA artifact territory where it's sort of like the whole frequency spectrum is sort of smothered. A good example of that is the Moondrop Blessing 2. It has that issue, not the worst issue I've heard. The The Audio Legacy 3 is probably the worst offender of that I have heard, at least the particular sample that I had. But yeah, not to go off on a tangent. Yeah, just in general, when it comes to technicalities, the VX is definitely up there. Probably one of the most technical IEMs that I've heard, and I'd probably rank it pretty high too if it weren't for the BA timbre and the weird imaging that I've noticed so far. I think the best word to describe the VX would be sterile. It's got a very high res like quality to its notes that sort of grabs you when you first listen to it. But as you listen to it a little bit more, I think some of that magic sort of wears off, and it feels more like a tool at the end of the day to me. No offense. It is definitely a very good IEM, and there's no doubt that it plays at the top of the IEM game. But I just don't think it's my cup of tea exactly. Like I said, they're just impressions. I will probably get a full review out sometime next week. I'll probably have to speed run it, but yeah. I hope you guys found them helpful. If you did, be sure to smash that like button and to subscribe for future content. Thanks for watching, and peace out until next time.